You're live. Right, folks, just gone past 7 o'clock in Queensland. It's 8 o'clock in New South Wales and Victoria, Tasmania. It's 7:30 in South Australia for our two listeners. They told me to stay 7:30 for South Australia. Now, of course, 10 o'clock in New Zealand across the ditch, and 10 o'clock in the UK, where my co-host Andrena is broadcasting from. And simply below her is Clive, who he's turned his microphone off. But so he lives in a beautiful province called Wiltshire, well known for crop circles. So it's a great story we've got today, and I'm going to pass you over to Andrena.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And if you're listening to a replay, you're very welcome to tune in and listen to today's guest, who I'm really thrilled to have on. We have Clive de Carle, and I had the pleasure of meeting him probably about a month ago now at a Shine seminar in Bristol, and listening to his talk on health. And as people know, I'm really passionate to be the best version of myself in, using many tools and techniques. And listening to Clive, and after his talk, the amount of women that came up with aches and pains, and he was able to help them in so many ways, was just amazing. I learned so much from that talk. And since being on his website and listening to his different videos, oh my gosh, you've got so much knowledge and wisdom to share. So I'm going to hand it over to you now, because I know you have an amazing story of how your journey started on this pathway.
Well, thank you, Andrena. What happened for me was that about 35 years ago, I made a mistake and I went to a doctor. This was really a serious error. And the doctor said, you need an antibiotic. I took one, and within about 3 months, I was in hospital. My health had deteriorated so much just from one pharmaceutical drug that I could no longer walk or get dressed or get out of bed, for that matter. And my decline had been really, really rapid. And so weeks in hospital, the doctor said, there's nothing that we can do for you. You're a hopeless case. But after 3 weeks in hospital, I figured it out for myself. I worked out that I wasn't low on drugs. I didn't need surgery. I'd been poisoned. And so I went about getting the poisons out of my body and putting nutrition in. And all the arthritis that I had all just disappeared 35 years ago, never to come back. And I realized, well, hang on a minute. These doctors don't appear to know what they're doing. And then a couple of years later, my dad's best friend got cancer for the second time. And he said, look, they took a kidney out last time. I haven't got a spare one left, So he did roughly what I did, taking minerals and vitamins and probiotics and stuff. And he also took 35 grams of vitamin C every day. Now, he'd been given by the doctors generously weeks to live. He lived another 20 years, and when he did die, it wasn't from cancer. Wow. So again, I thought, well, hang on a minute. What do doctors know about health? And so I looked into it a bit and realized that in the 5 years, in the UK anyway, and in the States, probably in Australia, in the 5 years of medical school, they do precisely around 4 hours of health, i.e. nutrition, minerals, vitamins, amino acids, essential fats, carbohydrates, proteins, all that stuff, 4 hours. So we lose our health, and then we go and see a doctor who knows nothing about health. They know about drugs. They know how, they get a license after 5 years. Doctors get a license to administer poisons. And that's because they're all poisons, more or less, one way or another. They're not natural, so there's going to be some unwanted effects along with the desired effects. So it's like you want to go and buy some fish for dinner, and you go to the bookshop asking for fish. They can't help you. You go to a doctor asking for health. They can drug you. They can remove chunks of you. They can blast you with radiation if they want to. But they're likely to get struck off, lose their license if they recommend broccoli or fatty fish or something. I mean, it's it's ridiculous. So at that time, I was running a contact lens company, and I was lucky enough to sell that. And I had the luxury to think, well, what shall I do now? And I decided I'd study health as a subject, because it was clear that almost nobody knows what health is, let alone the health service. So I just devoted all my time to studying, years and years and years and years of studying. And I went on lots of courses and stuff like that. And the first thing I studied was actually hypnosis, because I realized that the power of the mind is so ridiculously strong that, let's say, a doctor has said, you've got 6 months left to live. Right? If you believe that, then unfortunately that might come true. So I started learning how to use language in a positive way, so that if somebody wants to get better, that I can help them learn the self-hypnosis necessary to carry that out. And I mean, it's super simple. You want to talk to yourself in positive language. You catch yourself beating yourself up about something in the past, or feeling guilty or shame, or shame is a big killer, by the way, toxic shame. But so that's half of it, and then the other part of it is to realize that we are created with some fairly simple components, a bunch of minerals, bunch of fats, bunch of amino acids. We're fairly simple in our components, and lots of people go to homeopaths or herbalists or acupuncturists or whatever it is to get their natural remedy. But what if, and this is the case, we are self-repairing, what if the only problems that make us ill in the first place are three? There's toxic poisoning through eating bad foods, drinking poisoned water, or whatever that might be. Then there's nutritional deficiency. The food isn't what it used to be, so the nutrition just isn't there. And then there's physical damage. So there are only three reasons why anybody gets ill: physical damage, you get knocked over, nutrient deficiency, toxic poisoning. So if you can remedy any injuries you might have, get rid of the pain and so on, if you can get the toxins out, which is easy generally, if you can put nutrition in, which is also fairly easy, then by default you should be better and don't need a doctor. We are self-repairing. Imagine that we went to the zoo and most of the animals were ill in the zoo. The first thing we'd ask the zookeeper, wouldn't it be, what are you feeding these animals? You're feeding them something wrong, so they're all ill. Yet we are going to the shops, many people are, and buying food that's been poisoned. It's had herbicides and insecticides and larvicides and fungicides and God knows what sprayed on it repeatedly. And people are just eating it thinking, well, that won't matter. A little bit of poison won't hurt me. But unfortunately, as we know, eventually poisons tend to catch up with you.
Well, particularly with DDT, wasn't it?
Yes, very, very popular. And just like the little jabby things they're giving people, we were assured, just like thalidomide, just like smoking, just like everything else that's good for you and doctors recommend it,
Uh-huh. But also amalgam is an awful. I was reading or listening to one of your talks on your website, and because amalgam, when you have a hot drink, the vapors are always sleeping in, aren't they? And you've got all this poison still going through your body, and dentists are still treating people with mercury.
Well, yes, they are. And it's interesting you mentioned that. I had a client about 2 weeks ago a couple, they had a 20-year-old son who was severely autistic, so much so that he was non-verbal. And 20 stone, you couldn't say no to this 20-year-old autistic child. If he wanted the chocolate, he was going to get the chocolate. There wasn't much choice. Anyway, I said, look, I would suspect that maybe the major problem with the son is toxic metal poisoning. Could have been mercury, could have been aluminium, who knows, but toxic metal poisoning, lead. So I recommended that they gave the 20-year-old some sulfur. organic MSM sulfur, and that's white powder extracted in the paper milling process from trees. So it's pretty natural. And sulfur is a healing mineral that's in garlic and ginger and eggs and cruciferous vegetables. Healthy food sometimes has sulfur in it. People used to go for sulfur baths. They have hot sulfur. Anyway, the next day, the child cried for 1 hour, which was unusual. Then he said for the first time, "Mama."
Wow.
Right. So how quickly it seems as if the sulfur was able to neutralize the toxic poison that was, or at least a tiny bit of it that was impacting on his brain. So when you mix a metal with sulfur in the right way, you can create a metal sulfate. So by taking lots of MSM organic sulfur into your body, it mixes with the toxic metals and sulfates it, and all the sulfates, all the metal sulfates, are water soluble. So imagine, that mercury had come off a filling or come out of a tuna fish or something. One little atom of mercury that will go around the body, killing every human cell it comes across, or probably bacteria as well. And it's in no way weakened by that. So that mercury just goes on forever. But you can get it out. And there are other ways to get toxins out. Vitamin C can be very effective. Fulvic minerals can be very effective. There are a number of things. Charcoal can be very effective. So there are cases where the doctors have said it's incurable. They might say it's genetic and there's nothing you can do. And it's been proven for decade after decade that the doctors say it's incurable or it's genetic, not because it is, but because that's the easy answer when they don't know how to deal with it. So what I found is that most lacks of health, you've lost your health somehow, disease, illness, whatever you want to call it, almost all of it is recoverable. Ironically, the only thing that I can't fix is type 1 diabetes, which is my own issue. That's the residue of what I've got from having been poisoned 35 years ago. But anyone who's got type 2 diabetes needs to know that's easy. Generally speaking, within 30 days, one could stop being type 2, generally.
So, I mean, we all got taught apple a day kept the doctor away.
There's probably some truth to that.
Organic.
Well, you say that. I went down to my local market and there was a regular farmer. We just got chatting. And I explained that I'd had an organic farm years ago. And I asked him, what have you done with the apples here? And he said, I've sprayed them many, many times with all, and he listed, he thought I was a farmer. He don't think he heard the word organic. He thought I was a farmer. So he listed all these chemicals he sprayed. And then, of course, we spray it with wax so that the rain doesn't wash the chemicals off. Oh, my God.
Oh.
I mean, apples didn't, when I was young, apples weren't waxy. Now, lots of apples in the supermarkets have like a layer of wax, and it is a layer of wax to stop the chemicals being washed away.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worrying. Like, it's funny because I went to get some apples in Glastonbury a couple of weeks ago, and they were all packed in the shop, and they were either from New Zealand or from Australia. Well, hello, I'm in Somerset, where the cider apples grow. But trying to get local ones, unless you go scrumping in the Abbey or somewhere, it's just it's not so easy to get organic foods over here. I find you really got to search for them in the markets, and as opposed to the local shops. You go in some of the supermarkets and they've just got a small section of a couple things that don't look very healthy anyway, let alone being organic.
So the answer is not to go to supermarkets if there is any way of choosing. I mean, there might perhaps be an organic farmer growing some of the things you like to eat locally. So you could cut out the middleman, cut out the shops, cut out the poisons, and encourage local farmers who love doing it to do it. Also, what if you're lucky enough to have a garden, but maybe you've got a neighbor who's got a garden that they're not using, why not plant fruit trees, nut trees, grow food? Because when I had the organic farm, the people around me were so healthy. I don't remember anybody ever getting a cold or anything, because the food we were eating was just top class and grown on soil that hadn't been previously destroyed. The problem is that just because it says organic doesn't mean that they grew it on soil that hadn't previously been ruined. A goat, for instance, or a cow can happily graze in a forest. Cows love eating the leaves off trees and so on. Goats can graze when nothing else can. But the moment you plough a field, millions of life forms have now died because of the exposure to the air and the light. And this is a bit of a rant for the benefit of vegans. Vegans often believe that by not eating animals or animal products, they are saving the lives of conscious, intelligent beings. But in my reckoning, the beetles under the ground, the worms, everything else living in the soil, the mycelium, everything is alive with consciousness. And people need to wake up that actually we are designed to be omnivores. We are designed to eat fatty foods. And the best fatty foods, from a health perspective, can be things like avocados. They could be things like cold pressed olive oil. There are all sorts of great foods with fats in, but it's the animal fats that are probably the most beneficial. And to give you an example, what happens with vegans after a long period of time, could be 10 years or less or more, they run out of B12. And people who run out of B12 have a frightening set of symptoms, often diagnosed as multiple sclerosis, sometimes diagnosed as Parkinson's, sometimes dementia. And I've seen dementia, Alzheimer's, reversed with cholesterol. Reversed.
Wow.
Back in the day, we were taught about the fat of the land, the cream of the crop, that the cream always rises to the top, unlike the scum that we run the planet. The cream rises to the top. It was always the fatted calf, right? Fat was revered. Cream, by definition, meant the best. And then they lied and they said, cholesterol is dangerous. Eat low fat. But what's your brain made of? Well, it's made of water and fat. Your brain is mainly, there's a lot of cholesterol in your brain. And so everybody who's lost their mind power, they've become demented or whatever it is, got neurological problems, could it be that they've not been eating enough natural animal fats? However, coconut oil will restore Alzheimer's. I have a woman who, about 10 years ago, maybe a bit longer, I was giving a lecture and I said, look, coconut oil, I told them the story, right? And she rings me up a few weeks later and said, 2 years ago, I had to stop speaking to mum on the telephone because it was impossible to understand a word she was saying. 4 tablespoonfuls of coconut oil every day for, 12 weeks or something, back speaking to her mum just like she was 2 years before.
Wow.
The first 2 years worth. Right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I try to explain to people some of the super simple stuff they should have taught us when we were 12. Now, children, what's your brain made of? Water and fat. What type of fat primarily? Cholesterol, right? 10 out of 10. And then we wouldn't have been fooled by the cholesterol scare, the myth. In England, there's something like 11 million people on statins. That's almost all the old people in the country. And they've all been fooled. That when somebody has cholesterol that's out of balance, the cholesterol is not the problem. The problem is the arteries. If the arteries are getting weak, the liver makes cholesterol to line the inside of the arteries so that they don't burst and kill you. But the doctors are so straightforward. Oh, high cholesterol, that's the problem. And they say, you've got good cholesterol and bad. That's rubbish. There is no way you've got bad cholesterol. Cholesterol one way, HDL and LDL just refer to the incoming cholesterol and the outgoing cholesterol. The idea that one is bad is just silly. So if you've lost your health, go to a health specialist, somebody who's spent a few years studying health, or if you can't find one locally, or you don't know how valid their information is. Some years ago, when YouTube started censoring me in 2014, making me take my videos down, and when that happened, I decided I'd start a club where I could host the videos on my own server and not be censored. Behind a club, obviously, if you're not a member of the club, you can't come in. So over the years, I've gathered together a series of articles, mainly videos, of the answers to most things that you can look up, Alzheimer's or autism or whatever it is, and hopefully there are a number of experts telling you how to fix the issue. And what I've tried to do is to keep it relatively small, because you could put autism onto Google, you get 1 million results. We think you do, but what you really want is, let's say, the 10 best videos or the 20 best bits of information, so you can just narrow it down. So people can join the club. It's called Secret Health Club, secrethealthclub.com, where there is a lot of very, very useful information about how to self-repair. It is as simple as that. Now, I put out a video just this week, and it's on YouTube, hasn't been taken down yet, where I got a strike, but that's for another video. Anyway, somebody pointed out to me that Google is a fraud. So you put in, anybody can do this, you put in any phrase or word you like. I put in, I think, climate change or something like that, and up pops 4,350,000,000 entries, like 4 billion, right? So I went to page 2, it's down by 1, I went through all the pages until I got to about page 43. And then suddenly it went to 258 or something like that entries, right? And it wouldn't go beyond page 43. So if there are really 4 billion entries, where are they? Because you only get 40 pages of entries and then it stops. Something is totally wrong with Google. They're lying. Check it out yourself.
And I always say to people, do your own research.
Well, absolutely, and don't go to Google to do it, because most of the truth has been wiped clean from Google. And look at what happened to Dr. Mercola. They're the most famous health expert in the world, and he was forced to remove every post he'd ever done over the last 25 years. So he'd been putting out free information, free health information to everyone in the world, and was being forced to have it removed. And now, if he posts an article, he has 48 hours before he has to take it down again, in case people find out the truth. It's just laughable.
Crazy. Talking of teeth, I read an article, or I think I listened to excuse me, a talk about wisdom teeth, and I was saying this to somebody the other day, because it said on the video that the wisdom teeth are on the heart meridian. Now I think nearly, well, I don't know what the figures are, but near everybody, when you're young, everybody has to have their wisdom teeth out because there's no room for them. And so listening to the video or the article is letting your mouth adjust to keep these in and keep your wisdom.
Well,
So I was just really interested about that, the fact that your wisdom teeth are actually on your heart meridians.
yeah, in fact, anybody who's got, let's say, a root canal should look up the meridian system, that the teeth are related to the meridian. Many people have found, let's say they've got breast cancer or something, they've got a root canal filling in the meridian that leads to that breast. So teeth are very, very crucial to health. And if you get a filling, then that tooth has been destroyed. It's only going to last another 10, 15, 20 years or something before it falls out. But let's say you had a cavity. The mistake is to go to a dentist. If you wake up one morning and the tooth is perfect, but suddenly now it hurts, you've got a cavity for the first time, all you've got to do is treat that tooth like you would your finger. If you cut your finger, in other words, you've got a cavity in your finger, you leave it alone, keep it sterile, it'll regrow. You break your fingernail, it'll regrow. You've got a little hole in your tooth, it'll regrow. All you got to do is stop eating for a day or something. Don't drink Coca-Cola, or just treat your mouth as if it were your finger. If you're thirsty, drink water. If you want to put something soothing on it that might aid healing, essential oil of clove is very famous for healing the mouth. There are many, many things that will heal the mouth. But what causes the cavity in the first place, and this also happens to vegans, is lack of vitamin K2, which almost only comes from natto, a fermented vegetable, fermented soya, or it comes from animal products. So it was discovered 100 years ago that the people who were newly discovered tribes all had perfect teeth, but the moment they were put on a Western diet, cavities started to happen. So your teeth regrow rapidly. Just think that you're eating food, you're grinding your teeth down, like your nails, they're growing really rapidly. So if you've got enough of the basic nutrients like vitamin K2 to regrow a tooth, in 24 hours you can have that cavity filled back up again. Of course, the dentist is never going to tell you that. It's no good for business. So what was your question about the teeth at the beginning? So I went on.
Yeah, I was just wondering that when I thought, gosh, millions and millions of people have had their wisdom teeth
Yes.
removed, and this relates to your heart
Yes.
meridian. So it's another way of stopping people really, tuning in and.
Absolutely. There are two important things to know. One is that the reasons our mouths have shrunk, when they discover wild tribes, so to speak, they've got big smiley mouths, right? But all our mouths have shrunk because of the lack of nutrition. So the dentists say, right, the answer is we're going to pull out your teeth and we're going to brace them in. But if you took your tongue, you said to the child, look, I want you to push your teeth out with your tongue. Just, whenever you think about it, straighten your teeth from the inside, pushing out. Well, you can do that. Most dentists, 9 out of 10, put a brace to make things smaller. There are others who put an internal brace to stretch things wider. Right? So it's sort of obvious. It's sort of obvious. So, yeah, anybody who's got a metal filling needs to research the work of Hal Huggins and decide whether they want to find a dentist who's intelligent enough to remove it safely. I mean, there are certain jobs that are great for psychopaths and dentists. And
what's his name? Hal, H-A-L, Huggins, Huggins.
Yes, H-A-L, Huggins, yeah. And he did so much research, which has benefited a lot of people. They're probably not there anymore, but there used to be thousands of videos on YouTube saying my tumor shrank in half after I had my teeth sorted.
I know I have my mercury fillings removed. Over 20 years ago now, and I know it was a real procedure in the fact that I had a special black cape on. I had to do vitamin C, back flower essences, and all sorts of things before she would do it all, and afterwards. So so that was. So the only thing I wonder, because obviously sometimes your crowns are left on like a piece of metal, aren't they? Which I think must be still the amalgam.
Well, I had a crown, and one morning it just fell out, and I had no idea I just thought it was a solid bit of ceramic or something. But what fell out was this cage, a metal cage with a ceramic over the top. And for it to have fallen out, it must have become loose quite some time. So the acid in my saliva would have been reacting with that metal. I wasn't aware that it was doing me harm, but it only was doing me any good. Then there are people who've got two dissimilar metals in their mouth. And if you want to create a battery, all you've got to do is take two dissimilar metals, put them in an acidic solution like saliva, and you're running a voltage through all those meridians in your teeth, which go down to the heart or the breast or wherever they're going.
Yeah. Interesting, eh? I don't know how we got on teeth. Another thing I was going to ask you about, it was K2, because if I if I go back a bit, I had a scan, a Healy scan, which came up 73% allergies, and I thought, I haven't got any allergies, but I really had some aches and pains, but I didn't class it as allergies. So I had a further scan on another device, and it showed that I had hair dye in all my organs. Now, my right hip has been agony for a while, and on the scan, when we looked through the whole body, my right hip, the poison had actually gone right down into the bone. So I've had frequencies to address that. So I was told K2 to take K2, which I have started. Now there's something else, but I was listening to one of your podcasts, and K2 is for many, many things. I'd never heard of it before, but I was advised to start on K2 amongst a few other things. And I have to say, since having another scan, and I've stopped using, hence my colour, I've stopped using, and it is supposed to be natural. So obviously there's something in there, and of course I'm like millions of people dye their hair, so I've been putting on dye that goes on the top of my head, and obviously it's been seeping in my organs, which I've addressed now. And I have to say, I had when I saw you at the talk, I had a session with you with some amazing instruments, and that has certainly made a massive difference to my hip. I still get twinges, but nothing like the pain that I had before.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, clearly the pain should disappear completely, because anybody who's got any issue with osteo at the front of it, osteoarthritis or whatever it might be, that's going to be a combination, almost certainly, probably, of a human K2 deficiency, not enough grass-fed animal products on that time, and a magnesium deficiency. Now, I've had many people tell me, including medical doctors, how they've seen hair dye poisoning people. You know, one of the major poisons, hair dyes. And there are some people who can get the colour that they want from henna. You know, it doesn't have to be red. You know?
No.
Yeah, anybody using hair dye really needs to consider it. And there's no regulator, just because it says organic shampoo or natural hair dye. There are no as far as I understand, there are no regulators to see whether it really is or not. And organic, of course, is a very wide term. You know, charcoal is organic. Just bear with me for 1 second. I've just got somebody at the door.
Andrena, is your little Dave sitting by your lap?
No, he's at the other end of the couch.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm just trying to. My computer's about to run out of battery as well. Sorry.
Going live on radio, this is what happens. Hey, Moana's actually asked about instead of coconut oil, because her body can't take coconut oil for the B12. Anything else that you think you could ask Clive about regarding memory?
Oh, well, okay. Memory is often to do with iodine. Now, many people are low on iodine because of cholesterol in the water. They're low on it because of maybe they're using fluoride toothpaste or drinking fluoridated water, or they're eating poor quality bread products which have flour improver on it, which is actually a bromine salt. So probably 95% of all our listeners here are low on iodine. Anybody who has a thyroid problem, almost certainly low on iodine. People may be putting on weight more than they want. People who've got temperature out of control, cold hands and feet, wear socks in bed, or menopausal women where they're getting hot flushes, dry skin. There are a number of classic iodine deficiency symptoms, and most people have got one to some degree or another. Iodine is so cheap, it was the go-to remedy for many medical doctors 150 years ago. They didn't know what was wrong with you, they just gave you iodine. So it would sort your temperature out, do all sorts of beneficial things. And what people often say, I've got brain fog, I just can't think clearly, I walk into a room and I can't remember why I walked in. That's classic iodine deficiency. Classic, easily fixed with a combination of iodine and selenium. And one wants to understand that, just like doctors are taught that 1 gram of vitamin C is all the body can take, which isn't true, doctors are taught that iodine should be given in micrograms. This is ridiculous. That might stop you from dying of iodine deficiency. It's not going to give you an intelligent brain or get your body temperature to normalize. You need milligrams for that. And doctors like Dr. Brownstein, who's written in the book Iodine, Why You Need It, Why You Can't Live Without It, reckons that about 12 milligrams a day is the amount that Japanese women get in iodine from all the seaweed and fish that they're eating. And Japanese women hardly ever get breast cancer compared to the West, the Western diet people, and hardly ever get thyroid issues, and they hardly ever get menopausal issues. It's the iodine. So everybody who's on L-thyroxine from the doctor needs to consider that a doctor 150 years ago would have done giving them a pharmaceutical and would have given them iodine. And if really necessary, they would have taken the glands of an animal from the thyroid and would have given that rather than the drug. And so that maybe answers some of the questions. I'd just like to go back just 1 minute to K2 and perhaps supplements in general, but it's worth understanding that maybe 90% of the supplements in the health stores are not what you want. They are not the best version, the really effective version. And with vitamin K2, for example, there's synthetic vitamin K2 and there's natural K2. Obviously, you want the natural stuff. And often I've seen in newspapers the headlines saying, vitamins don't work. We tested these vitamins and they didn't work, but they tested synthetic ones. Of course, they didn't work. They're synthetic. It's not to say that all synthetic vitamins don't work. There are synthetic ones that are perfectly good. But with vitamin K2, you want vitamin K2 MK7. MK7 is the natural version. And then it's down to the amount. There are lots of companies who they want their supplement to be $9.99 or $19.99, and they don't care whether it works or not. They know that you want it and you want to pay that price. So they give it to you at that price. They don't tell you you probably need 10 capsules for it to work, or they use a cheap version. I mean, magnesium, for instance. Many people say, I know that magnesium can reverse my constipation, can reverse heart arrhythmia, it can help with arthritis, it can help with aches and pains, it can stop a heart attack while it's happening. They inject magnesium right into it, magnesium sulfate, and it'll stop a heart attack. Magnesium is absolutely fantastic. If you go into the average store and you buy the regular stuff, it's usually magnesium oxide, which is what you do not want. You want a good quality magnesium, like all the supplements we mentioned. It's so important you buy the right stuff, otherwise it's unlikely to work or unlikely to work fully. Then with magnesium, for example, the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, which was worked out in the Second World War as the absolute minimum to stop people dying. Right? So if you're low on B1, you get beriberi. So to stop getting beriberi, you need a tiny, tiny amount of B1, but to be super healthy, you probably need a lot more. It's like that with K2, it's like that with magnesium in particular. So the RDA for magnesium is about 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium a day. So people look at their bottle of magnesium, it says 600, and they go, hooray, I only need to take 1. In fact, I'm getting more than enough of 1. But that's 600 of the compound, like magnesium oxide. It doesn't mean elemental magnesium. So usually in a 600 milligram capsule, there's only about 100 milligrams of pure elemental magnesium. So to get the 400, you're going to have to take 4. But 4 is only the RDA. You might need 8 or 12 in a day. So almost everybody, a lot of people have tried magnesium. So they've heard it reverses arthritis or whatever it might be, or stops their headaches, or stops You know, I mean, magnesium is the answer. So many people think they've tried and they haven't. They've tried the wrong type, they haven't tried enough. And the difference is, this year, I've had several people who were suicidal. They took 12 magnesiums in one day in divided doses. They weren't mega happy the next day, but they weren't suicidal anymore. There are some people who slept through the night, which they haven't done for years. Other people who, well, there's a good example. I was interviewed by Crow. I don't know if you've come across Crow. And he had a trigger finger, a locked finger, couldn't move it, been like that for ages. And his sister had just had an operation to have it fixed. I told him, I'd sent him some supplements in advance of the show that I was on. I told him, look, right now, take some magnesium and take some vitamin C. It was a 2-hour show. About 1 hour in, he goes, look, I can cancel the surgery. His finger had straightened in an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, I mean, this is getting the dose right of the right type.
Yeah. And that brings me on to, because I've been a vegetarian for a long time, and I was diagnosed with osteo, which I've addressed on so many levels. But since having a scan and coming back from living in Australia for 10 years, coming back here, and the change of diet and everything has been a real another journey in itself to be back, and the dampness and all sorts of things. So I've gone on to the iodine instead of, I've been more rigid in taking different things. So I've been doing the iodine. I've done I bought your big pot of magnesium. I've been doing 12 a day. I'm doing Volvic minerals. And now I'm doing the K2. I mean, I'm not doing other things. But I have to say, I really noticed a difference in how I'm feeling. I thought I felt good before, put it that way, but now I really feel so different in my body and my energy. I mean, I've still got a few aches and pains going on, but I know, I'm in the later stages of life on paper, but I'm reversing all that. I'm going in the reverse order. So I know magnesium, I only used to take a couple. But what about the other thing is calcium? Because people say you need calcium for your nails, and so. But I've read mixed messages about calcium, so I wondered what your take on calcium is.
In my experience, maybe 1 or 2% of people are actually really low on calcium, but most people got way too much. Anybody who's got calcifications, arthritis or calcified art, if anybody's been told you're calcified in some way, that's too much calcium, obviously. Magnesium dissolves calcium. So anybody taking a supplement that's got calcium in it, unless you're sure you're low on calcium, I wouldn't take it. I mean, anybody who's eating dairy, for instance, they should have lots of calcium. There's lots of calcium in vegetables. Most people are low on magnesium, not calcium. So, whatever doctors say is usually backwards. And doctors advise you to take calcium because they've never studied it. They've done 4 hours on the whole works. They don't know. But when they say your iron levels are wrong, or your B12 levels are wrong, or whatever, they don't know. The only reason they can comment on it is the lab has given them a guidance range. This is low, this is high. They don't really know in general. I mean, a few of them might have made a specialist study on it, but your average doctor doesn't really know anything about anything.
No.
And the press mirror what the doctors say. The press are always saying statins are good for you, when I've never seen a single case of a statin helping anybody ever. In fact, I've seen many people go blind, many men become impotent, all sorts of problems because of people taking statins. So don't do it. Back in, I think, the 1970s, a medical doctor, Dr. Abraham Hoffer, did research about cholesterol reduction. He found it's called orthomolecular medicine, which is using vitamins and minerals to reverse and cure everything. If I use the word cure or cancer, by the way, I spell it with a K. In England, you have to for legal reasons. So it is very possible to reverse anything. So if you're still in some pain, Andrena, then simply there's some fine tuning that needs to be done. It may be that the MSM sulfur, it may be that a sulfur deficiency is there. That might be something to do with vitamin C. And it's just adjusting the doses and learning more. This is why I'm not labouring the point of it, but the Secret Health Club is very useful, because there are videos there by people like Dr. Brownstein explaining exactly how to figure out how much iodine you need, and Dr. Whitcomb explaining how much K2 you actually need. And it's massive. The information is super important, because it's not just fixing ourselves. We need to fix all our friends, because, I mean, how many of our friends randomly have a bit of arthritis, or a bit of this, or a bit of that, or a fluttering heart, or constipation? I mean, people don't talk about constipation, but so many people don't go to the loo 2 or 3 times a day, or even once a day. Some people don't go for days or weeks. It's no wonder that those people might get bowel issues.
Yeah.
Hey, just changing the subject a bit. What I was really impressed with Somerset, and I think it's in other counties, is about the end of July, August, is that they have the harvest. It's like, so you don't really, when I say the harvest, I mean talking about the festivities of having a good harvest. It's almost going back into Druid times, isn't it? Where there's a connection with the land, where the land and you are one, but like the Arthurian stories. Very Druidic, isn't it? Your whole country, where, I mean, you're in Wiltshire, I mean, you're getting these bloody crop circles turning up and everything. So do you think that your strength lies in the fact that, you've got the when you got the green thumb, or whatever they talk about it, when you're working with the little people who tell you what type of natural foods to participate in? Yeah.
I don't quite know where to start answering that question. Yes, this is crop circle world, but the farmers now have an agreement to mow them out on the day they arrive. They rather than have tourists come and go onto their field to look at them, they would rather destroy the entire crop early to stop it happening. I don't understand why it's like that. So you used to be able to see crop circles, a lot of them, but now I say they mow them out. The Druid thing is quite strong here. About over 15 years ago, I think, I got invited to 2 Druid things. I got invited to take part in the summer solstice at Stonehenge. And I didn't know, but the first thing they did is they gave me these white robes and a pointy Ku Klux Klan hat. I didn't know I was meant to dress up as a Druid. I thought they were all real Druids, but no, there are quite a few people like me who were pretend weekend Druids. But the problem was, even though it was the summer solstice, it was pouring with rain. And I'd got Wellington boots with me, so I was all right. But they were a bit short, and my robes were a bit short. So the rain fell on my pointy Ku Klux Klan hat, went down my robes, and started filling my Wellington boots. So about halfway through the ceremony, it's hail to the east and hail to the west and all this stuff. And there was a press taking pictures of the real Druids. And I was so pissed off. It's a splosh. And it just didn't seem right. So, sorry, guys, stop the procession. I've got to empty my Wellingtons. And then, anyway, after that, so it was the most unspiritual event I've been to like that. Anyway, so then I get invited to Druid camp for a week. And we arrive, and we go into this farm, and through one field, through a gate to another field, loads of fields. So it's totally in a valley all by itself, nobody overlooking. And the whole hillside is on fire. And it's on fire in spirals. And they explained to me afterwards what they'd done is that in the day they'd laid pitch, burning to like tar, and they set fire to it. And so as my eyes got adjusted to what was going on, it's nighttime when we arrived, I realized all these naked people dancing around in this fire spiral on the hillside. Anyway, while I wasn't about to get naked, we joined in, and the ceremony ended after a while. And at the second it ended, There was the loudest explosion I've ever heard in my life. It's incredible. It wasn't like a bang explosion. It was like a ripping, tearing explosion. It was the strangest sound, really, I think I'd heard. And there was this gasp from everybody. And I couldn't understand. I mean, yeah, there was the weird noise, but it was more than that. And they explained to me that in the afternoon, all of them had been sitting under this giant willow tree. And 100 and some people, whatever. And that was what had happened. It was called a split willow. And the tree had split in half. And that tearing, screaming sound was the tree falling in half. And they said we all would have been dead. And it was timed at the very end of the period ceremony. I thought that was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. Gosh.
I mean, the willow tree was the home of aspirin, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. The white willow bark is a natural aspirin, exactly.
So I was going to ask, you mentioned about dosages, and I think this is another thing that unless you go to, say, somebody like you or your other herbalist or whatever, and they say, right, you need to take 3 a day for the next 3 months, and then we'll have another look at it. Because like, I can speak for myself. I've taken, so many vitamin C's for a little while, then I'll stop, and then I'll have a little, I might do something else. So what would be a good guideline for people to start, like to get them on magnesium now? If we could say to people, one of the best things that's going to help you and your body now on so many levels would be to take magnesium. Would that be a good starter for people? What dosage? Because I know people have got so many aches and pains and different levels of illnesses and allergies and all sorts. So where does one start if they were just to start off?
Okay, well, let me tell you what I did. Right? So up until 15 years ago, I used to get colds in winter. Then I realized that it's winter. Anything that happens in winter, not summer, it was often to do with the sun deficiency. You're not getting enough vitamin D from the sun. So I started taking 10,000 IUs of vitamin D not every day, so I'd forget, but several days a week maybe, just in winter if I wasn't getting sunshine. And I've never had so much as a sniffle or a cold in 15 years. It was just vitamin D that I was lacking. And how many people feel happy when they're in the sunshine and glum when there isn't any sunshine? Yes, most people. So what if the sun is more than just vitamin D, but nevertheless, vitamin D is incredible for happiness and general well-being. In fact, there was some European research done on cancer, spelled with a K, and it turned out people with the highest levels of vitamin C had over 70% less cancer. It was massive. Now, if that were a drug, they'd be selling it for 10,000 quid a year. But gosh, 70% less cancer risk. And what does it cost? 20 quid. It's ridiculous cheap. Now, let's say that you think, 10,000 units, that sounds like a lot. Well, for about 20 quid online, you can buy a little home testing kit. And you could take 10,000 IUs every day for a month in winter and then test yourself. Were you taking too much, too little? Did you get it just right? So, not too much of a worry. I personally have never met anybody who's had a side effect from taking too much vitamin D. You can drown in water, I'm sure it's happened, but not in my experience. With magnesium, the only risk with magnesium is diarrhea. Both magnesium and vitamin C are self-regulating. The body can regulate the amount of magnesium and vitamin C you have. If you take too much, you're in the bathroom with diarrhea. So not too much of a worry, apart from what the professionals call disaster trousers. But, I like to get the terminology right.
Yeah.
Most people can take 1 or 2 magnesium capsules at a time. Some people can take 3 or 4. Some people can take 6. But so you've got to experiment to begin with. Try 2, see. If you're in the bathroom, that's too much. Try 1 at a time. But you can just take them all day. I can happily take 6, so I just maybe do it twice a day if I really felt the need. If I'm feeling anxious, I've had a stressful day and I want to relax, then I'll be likely to go for magnesium for that purpose, because magnesium relaxes every cell of the body, your mind, the muscles, your bowels, the heart, everything. So magnesium is fantastic, self-regulating. Vitamin C, you can do the same. Now, let's say we were eating 200 years ago, we were picking the food fresh. All the vitamin C is in the vegetables and fruits, it's all right there. But by the time it goes through the food chain and into the supermarket and into our fruit bowl or vegetable bowl, how much of the vitamin C is still there? Well, maybe not much. Maybe not much at all. Hard to say. So I would say everybody is low on vitamin C, just like when I say everybody, I'm saying 95%. 95% of everybody is low on vitamin C, magnesium, iodine, and basic minerals in general. Probably. So if somebody was eating just the normal sort of diet, maybe supplementing 5 grams of vitamin C on top of that might be a good amount, maybe a couple of grams, which would be half a teaspoonful or something of pure powder in water in the morning and a half teaspoonful in the afternoon. That should mean that you are proof against infections, generally speaking. I mean, the keys to not have a cold or anything else that begins with CO would be, and ends in a number, would be zinc, which you can usually get from food, vitamin C, which you used to be able to get from food, and vitamin D, which you can get in summer. So those, if you've got enough zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin D, it's unlikely that you're going to catch something. And if you did, sufficient doses of vitamin C will almost certainly reverse it. The video I recommend the most for people to watch is called Reverse Pneumonia in 3 Hours. Reverse Pneumonia in 3 Hours, where Dr. Andrew Saul, who's written some fantastic health books, realizes he's got pneumonia, goes to see the doctor, and the doctor's useless, so he decides to try 2 grams of vitamin C every 6 minutes. Right? 2 grams every 6 minutes. 3 hours later, his temperature's normalized, his cough stopped, the symptoms of pneumonia have ended. So vitamin C, and I can quote Dr. Sarah Michael here and several other medical doctors, cures pneumonia, is the answer for sepsis. In sepsis cases in hospitals, 40% don't survive. Those who've been given vitamin C in the correct quantities, in the right way, less than 1% die.
Wow.
I mean, 40% die, less than 1% die. Vitamin C. It's the answer for smallpox. It's the answer for anything we call infections. Anything they want to stick needles in you for, vitamin C, generally speaking, will overcome the issue. And it's been, when I was young, there were still children at school that had metal calipers on their legs from polio.
Oh, yeah.
You can reverse polio with vitamin C. Reverse it. Let's take measles. Same deal. But some children occasionally might go blind with measles if it wasn't treated early enough. Vitamin A, given to those children, can reverse the blindness, right? Because the way to overcome infectious diseases is with orthomolecular medicine, vitamins, minerals, essential fats, probiotics, that sort of thing. It's, relatively speaking, easy. And everybody needs to educate themselves on the simplicity of getting better. And as far as supplements are concerned, I do have a video. It's, for obvious reasons, not on YouTube, but it's on Brand YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey and a few others, called Supplements. I think if I got this right, it's called Supplements, What to Take, How Much to Take, and When to Take them.
Oh, brilliant.
It's not 100% comprehensive, but it covers some of what we're discussing here and how to try and figure out what's right for you, because everybody's different.
Yeah.
Some people need magnesium every day. I do. If I don't have magnesium every day, I can get muscle cramps. And I take myself, so I take magnesium, sometimes I take potassium, sometimes I take vitamin B1, but this is because I'm diabetic type 1. Most people don't need that one. Most people really would benefit from vitamin D, vitamin C, iodine, magnesium, using good salt, never use table salt, use Celtic salt.
Celtic salt, yeah.
Celtic, it's lovely, tastes fantastic. Make sure you drink and bathe in filtered water. Look at every piece of food or drink and say, is this poisoned or not? And choose the healthiest options you can do. You know, I'm not by any means perfect in what I do, but if let's say I go out, I'm going out tonight, my son, we'll eat in a restaurant that I know is not organic. So what will I do? Well, I might take some fulvic minerals, ludicrously inexpensive fulvic minerals, tiny bottle lasted 4 months, and they are the trace elements that are generally speaking missing from foods. So 80% of our immune system is supposedly friendly bacteria in the gut, and they need to be fed. And we used to feed them with the probiotic, the spore biotics, the various factors from the soil. But now, where a lot of vegetables, for instance, are grown in mineralized water, they're not grown in soil anymore. The scientists look at the human body and say, these are the vitamins that the human body needs. Human cells thrive on, like magnesium. And then there are some others that we don't need. But one of them is yttrium. The mineral yttrium, spelled with a Y, is not used by any human cell, as far as they know. But the bacteria in our gut, who are creating our immune system, they thrive on yttrium. And there's yttrium in fulvic minerals. Fulvic minerals is a natural soil extracted material, which is so powerful, you just need a few drops to give you the micro trace elements that you need. There are things like magnesium, and they're not trace elements. You know, they're fairly big and bulky. You need those separately. But for all the tiny trace elements, fulvic minerals are magic. What else do fulvic minerals do? They neutralize chemicals. This is why I take some fulvic minerals after a meal, because a meal out. Because if I've got glyphosate, the Roundup herbicide that is causing so many health disasters on a planetary basis, fulvic minerals neutralize them, turn them off. And luckily, glyphosate is only in the body for about a month. So you don't have to be, I'm told, anyway, I'm not sure, and there are other chemicals in there probably apart from glyphosate, but I'm told after a month you don't sort of have to worry. But fulvic minerals, vitamin C, non-activated charcoal, C60 charcoal it's called, which is natural charcoal, non-activated, also sucks chemicals out of your body. MSM sulfur, as I mentioned at the beginning, fantastic to get poisoned out. So at the end of the day, it's not difficult to be healthy if you wake up to the fact that food really ought to be in its natural form. It comes in a package. Well, maybe you need to be concerned. Our ancestors would have eaten fresh food. They wouldn't have recognized 95% of what's in the shops. And even with the fresh fruit aisle, they would say, where's the smell? Because it's covered in wax or whatever. Then they would have opened the orange or the grape or whatever. Where are the seeds? This can't be real food. It's got no seeds. It can't reproduce itself. It's no good. If an animal couldn't reproduce itself, it would have died out. And we're being fed seedless grapes, seedless everything, and thinking that even though it's not strong enough to reproduce or not natural enough to reproduce, it's good food.
Yeah. There was a couple of other things I wanted to ask before we close today. I've got quite a few friends that have had to have the jabby through keeping their job and so on. What would you recommend to help them reverse what they've put in?
Okay, well, I put up a video on YouTube about this a couple of weeks ago. That's why I got a strike. All the things I've just mentioned, minerals, all those things will help get rid of the traditional poisons they put in spiky things, because they usually have antibiotics in there, they usually have preservatives, They have the fetal cells of aborted babies. They have all sorts of animal cells put in there, usually aluminium, mercury, all sorts of things. So everything we've discussed will help deal with that. How you get out the self-replicating nanobots and hydras that people are talking about, if they exist, I do not know. I'd be using a frequency device. If I thought that the vitamin C and so on wouldn't do the trick, just like with you experienced the Tesla device, I would use a frequency device to hopefully maybe neutralize anything that wasn't natural. On my website, there are all sorts of little devices. I mean, there's a little laser, which is like a very big watch that you fit, goes on the inside of the wrist there, and you can beam certain frequencies using light, which will knock out parasites, blood parasites, and all sorts of fantastic results you can have just from a little tiny array of lasers for half an hour on your wrist. I personally, as you know, prefer the old style technology. For myself, you experience it. I use Tesla technology, and if any practitioners particularly are interested in learning more about that, then I'm unable to talk about it publicly, really. Yeah. But if people join the Secret Health Club and go onto the Tesla page, they'll see the videos of what it's all about. And I've helped a number of practitioners in this regard, because one of the videos on the Health Club, I get 34 people out of pain in a row, spending less than 5 minutes with each one. It's outrageous. Well, people know that I'm not seeing clients. I don't see clients anymore, but I do.
I was going to ask you that. Do you see clients anymore?
Generally not. I've got clients from years before, so if they get a new issue, then I'll help them. But I just don't have the time currently. I'd rather spread the information widely like this.
And one of our viewers put in that she couldn't take coconut oil. Because that's another thing, because I always say, if you're aching and paining, if you're not taking, it's like a car, you need to put oil within your body. So I know you've addressed coconut oil, but what other oil would you recommend for people that can't take coconut oil?
But sorry, I've been talking too much, so I've got to get some water. Sorry.
All right, mate. Very
good. No, I tell you, I recommend that people watch his videos, and if you go onto his Secret Health Club, you can buy lots of vitamins at bulk price and save a lot of money, and know that you're getting quality. So that makes a big difference. So he's got so many banned videos that you could watch. There's so much information on there. So I highly recommend that you take a look at the Secret Health Club. And there are special offers every month, or I think it's every month we do different offers on different products. So there's so much information there. So going back to the coconut oil.
Yes. Well, our ancestors, of course, at least in England, would not have had access to coconut oil. So they would have eaten butter, lard, dripping. They would have eaten lots of eggs. They would have eaten cheese, milk, fatty fish, fatty meat.
And they would have got a free trip to Australia,
Yeah. There are lots of answers, and really all one's got to do is look back. What did our ancestors eat? Well, there you go. It's fresh, local, seasonal, real, had seeds in it, dry the seeds out, plant them next year. And they went for taste. They didn't go for quantity. They went for quality. But the average supermarket, unfortunately, goes for quantity and low price and not nutrition.
Because I did have a lady called Hannah on I think it was last week, and what they're doing in Australia, Mullumbimby, the farmers are putting their information on the website, and people are going direct to the farmers to just get what they need. And they're setting up their own schools for where teachers have not been, or have had to leave because they've not had the jabby. They're setting their own schools up and everything. So I think that's the way to go, to go organic, to go to the markets, or find your local farmer, or and do the best you can to get the best quality food, eh?
Well, I completely agree. And, there have been currency systems, bartering systems like the Let's scheme and local currencies. And we need to step out completely of all the government's plans for us, start private societies, start clubs, use our own currency, use our own bartering schemes, and step out and hope the rest of the world will follow us. Because if we change currencies on government, so suddenly government could no longer pay the people in blue costumes or the corrupt, if they can't pay their cronies, then we could change currencies on for them. Systems like Bitcoin already exist. If only people were a little more confident about it. When governments go on holiday at Christmas, for instance, usually things don't get worse. It's only when they come back and start doing things get worse. My theory is when they go on holiday this Christmas, that we'll just manage, we'll take care of it, and if we need them, we'll ring them. But otherwise, just have a long extended holiday in their lovely houses.
A permanent holiday might be good.
Well, yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean, what do the rich want to do after they retire? Well, they want to do gardening, right? So let them garden. Keep them away from the poisonous plants. Don't let them play with those. But otherwise, let's let them get on with it. Enjoy their riches. It's fine. Just leave us alone.
Indeed. Well, on that note, I have to thank you, and it's been absolutely amazing because I've learned so much more again, and I'm sure so many of our viewers will listen to this again because there's a lot of information. So thank you very much for coming on and doing the work that you're doing. And it was a lovely interview.
Well, thank you so much. I wish my background looked like the beach scene there. You actually aren't really with a beach behind you, probably, but because it could be.
It's an island just off Brisbane. It's called Moreton Island. So it's at a resort called Tangalooma. Yeah.
Well, hopefully one day we'll be able to travel to Australia again. I liked Australia.
Yeah.
Wait, you come as a £10 or full fare?
Yeah, no, proper.
I think that's what happens when you get a bit of sunshine and you're a bit more lively.
Absolutely. Well,
come on, sorry.
Thank you very much. Happy to come on again.
Bloody brilliant.
No, we'd love to have you again. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom.
Pleasure.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Oh, hang on a sec. Better turn off here.